Welcome, Elkie. Rehearsal
Hi.
studios in North London. How's the rehearsals going?
Well, we haven't gone very far because you came in and you wanted to do the interview with me. So we're
I'm
sort
sorry
of
about
like, so the band are waiting for us quite patiently outside.
that. Right.
Anyway, they needed a cup of tea. But yeah, we're about halfway through.
And some of the band go back a long way, don't they, with you?
Yes,
Can you
my
take?
drummer Michael Richardson's been with me for going on 18 years now. Jean Roussel on keyboards. He was the original piano player on Pearl's a Singer and did the album 2 Days Away. And then Live and Learn with Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller producing.
Hmm.
So Brian Badham's brilliant bass player. He's now been with me a fair few years. Michael Caine on guitar, fabulous blues player. He's been with me a fair while now. And Jeff Whitehorn, who is guesting on the second part of the show, he was on the Nights in White Satin thing that I did with Gus Dudgeon, the late Gus Dudgeon, on the Pearls album, and he plays brilliantly. He's getting better. I mean, we haven't worked together for, gosh, it must be over 20 years. And we did a show a couple of weeks ago in Cornwall, and it was fabulous. And so he's agreed to do this thing in Shepherd's Bush with me.
And in the set list for Shepherd's Bush, there's some stuff off your new album, which is tentatively called White Girl Lost in the Blues. You doing some songs off that?
Yes, I am. I'm hoping that we do end up calling the album White Girl Lost in the Blues, because I sort of feel that's a little bit what I'm about. You know, I don't usually write songs autobiographically, but this one is a bit like that. And I'm not actually doing that song in the show, but I will be doing some other songs. One that I've written with Jay, my son, who's producing the album. And there's a song by Paul Rogers, Muddy Waters. I mean, I've admired that man for so many years. He's a brilliant, brilliant singer. So underrated. I mean, people don't know who I'm talking about. He used to be the singer with Free, and then he was with Bad Company. And then a band actually called The Firm. I went to see them many years ago with Jimmy Page on guitar. Fabulous.
And when it comes to songwriting, going way back in the mists of time, was it Lady in the Rain? Was that one of the first ones that you wrote?
Yeah, it was actually. I see, you know, you've been reading your stuff. I didn't really take my songwriting very seriously in those days. In fact, quite honestly, if it hadn't been for Robert Palmer, I probably wouldn't have even bothered writing any songs at all. Because I can remember going to one of the gigs, one of many hundreds of gigs that we did up and down motorways in the UK and America. And I'd be sat in the back of the bus and sort of like going on about, you know, mad sort of lyrics. You know, I probably had a bit too much to drink and say, write them down, he'd say, write them down, go on. And I never had any real confidence in my writing at all, you know. And then, of course, I did the albums for A&M Records, and A&M really didn't push the writing side at all. They just thought I was an interpreter, and that's where it started.
Rich Man's Woman, that is.
Yeah. They really didn't think much of my writing, didn't push that side of me, you know. And I think you should encourage people, because the more you tell somebody that they can't do it and you don't do it very well, that they sort of think, oh, well, you know, maybe he's right, you know, and I think you should encourage them.
And you described that album, Rich Man's Woman, as a shadow of what it could have been, that the demos were almost better than the actual production.
They were, without a doubt. Went over to America with these producers that were the flavour of the month, Kenny Kerner and Richie Wise, and I feel they totally destroyed what I should have really done, you know, I really do. But there you go, you know, it didn't happen.
And on the songwriting thing, working with Lieber and Stoller, that was helpful to you?
Well, in a way, I didn't get a lot of my songs on the album. Then that was my A&M period, you know, of like the interpreter. But let's face it, they were great songs. Some of those songs that I did do on 2 Days Away, you know, really. I don't think I've ever asserted myself. I think that's been probably my problem. It most certainly was in those early days. Didn't assert myself. You know, I pushed myself forward and say, yes, I have to do this. Yes, I have to do that. I think that's probably been my biggest problem.
And very recently, last year, you had 2 albums running in tandem, Trouble in Mind with Humphrey Lyttelton and Shangri-La. And on Shangri-La there was a version of Strange Fruit. Can you tell us how that came to be? Because that was a very unorthodox approach to songwriting.
Do you think so? Well, I suppose Jay had put this track down, and I was supposed to be writing a song onto this track. And we were sat down to dinner at his house, and he had it on in the background, and I just started singing Strange Fruit. And it worked, it worked. Apparently it's a 7/4 time signature, I believe. In fact, I just asked my drummer and he said, yeah, I think it's 7/4.
And it was just listening to an original song, the backing track, suddenly it triggered Strange Fruit in your...
It worked, yeah, it really worked. And it is a fabulous song, isn't it? I mean, you always associate that song with Billie Holiday. That I must have sort of like worn out the blinking copy, you know, when I was in my teens. I adored the woman.
Right. And when you did the 2 albums in tandem in 1 year, that in a certain way it shows both sides of Elkie Brooks, doesn't it? It shows the sort of traditional jazz blues side and the songwriting side. What was it like working with Humphrey Lyttelton again? Because you go back to the 60s again, don't you? You worked with him back
Yes. Shortly after the band folded, Vinegar Joe that I was in, Humph asked me to do a couple of songs on an album, and so that would be quite some time, you know, it'd be 20 odd years ago, wouldn't it, before the last time I recorded with him. He came to see one of my shows, I think it was in Leicester, and he said, why don't we do an album together? Why don't we do something really bluesy? I said, all right then, you know, and we did, and he got a load of titles together. I did. Came down to the house in Devon and with the band, and we recorded it in a matter of 3 or 4 days, you know, because that's the way he does things, you know. He's a wonderful man. He really, really is. In fact, he's the inspiration to one of the songs that I'm doing on this new album. He phoned me up on Sunday afternoon, and I was feeling really a bit glum. I was sat playing the piano and thinking, well, I've got gigs to do with Humph this year, and I've got to put my jazz hat on, and I've got my own shows, I've got to put that hat on. I'm doing the album. How am I going to do it all? You know, just can't. And then he phoned up and he was telling me what he's doing. And so it made my stuff, what I'm doing, very insignificant. So I thought, come on, girl, get it together. And I put this song down, and it definitely was inspired by Humph.
What's it called?
It's wonderful. It's not always look on the bright side of light, but that was kind of keyed it off. You made me see the brighter side when all my hope was gone. That's it, yeah. Right. I honestly, when I've written something, I know it sounds dark, but I forget it. It sort of goes out my mind and I go, I'm on to the next one.
Right. Going way back down memory lane now, you started singing aged 3, I read somewhere.
Probably earlier, yes.
And in a very musical family as well.
Well, not really. My brothers were musical, but my mum and dad weren't. My mum, bless her, couldn't, you know, hold a tune. She was awful. She really was, bless her. Wonderful woman. She could sew great. And my father was a baker, but no, they weren't musical at all. I have been told that her great-grandmother or something was a concert pianist, so maybe it's all sort of filtered down the line via her. But no, they weren't musical at all. But Brother Ray and Brother Tony both played. Brother Tony played the drums. He was with Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas at the very beginning. And then they broke up, and then they started again, and now they've recently again broke up, you know. But he's still plays semi-professionally.
And your brothers sort of influenced you more on the sort of jazz school, Count Basie and things like that, is that right?
Most certainly. Brother Ray brought me, for my 12th birthday, Ella Fitzgerald, Ella Swings Lightly. And I knew every little lick on that album. Every time I came home from school, on the record player it would go. And that's how I learnt how to sing properly, listening to Ella Fitzgerald. She was a great technician.
Mm-hmm. Were there any of the pop singers around that time that inspired you?
Yes, most certainly. Gene Vincent,
right.
Eddie Cochran, Cliff Richard, Elvis, all those sort of people, yeah. Bill Haley and the Comets, I can remember jiving in school when I was about 12 to Bill Haley and the Comets.
And when did you decide that you were going to go full on as a singer?
Don't think I really did. I think I just wanted to be a big star at 14, you know. I just really, really did. I don't think I really, really knew what I wanted.
But your first audition, it sounds like a fairy tale. It sounds like a film, doesn't it? Because it was Don Arden, Palace Theatre, Manchester.
When I was 15.
Right.
And, well, it didn't really come to very much, to be honest with you. I went on the show that night. I did the audition for Don, and I did the show that night, and then he took me to, I think it was Newcastle and then Bristol. I think I got a cold. I got really poorly and I had to go home. And I thought, no, I
but
can't.
you went in to do an audition, and suddenly you were on a package tour. Didn't you think, well, hang on, maybe I should be doing this for the rest of my life?
I was very, very naive. I mean, I was 15. I was the only girl on the show, and it was a bit daunting. For quite a few years after that, Don tried to get me auditions with different cabaret clubs, and nothing really came of it. I didn't really start properly until I got with a dance band. I did an audition for a dance band, Eric Delaney's band. And you know, he came to see me last year when I was in Newcastle. He lives up in Newcastle now. It was great, you know, and he was really very complimentary about me. But so I sang with his band for a couple of years.
And that was like doing air bases in Germany and things
yes,
like that? Yeah.
That's when I first heard my R&B. I was on American bases, and we hadn't got the twist here. Chuck, what's his name? Chubby Checker, that was it. And the first time I ever heard of Etta James. Right. Something's Got a Hold on Me. That was my first record that I did.
You covered I'd Rather Go Blind?
Yeah, I did. But I mean, she was a big influence on me. She was very, very big in America at that time. And Chuck Berry, of course. The Miracles, Shop Around, was top of the charts in America, but it hadn't filtered through over here. Mm-hmm. So it was very exciting for me, you know, all this wonderful music and being with all these wonderful people, you know.
Right. And of the English girls that were the pop stars, was there any one of them that you felt was like a kindred spirit, or did you feel because of your jazz blues thing you're totally out there on your own? You know, Lulu, Dusty Springfield, Beryl Marsden perhaps, or anybody that you felt, yeah, were of the same ilk?
In a word, no.
So you did see yourself totally.
Yeah, I'm afraid I just didn't seem to fit in, you know. I really didn't in the 60s. I did not, you know.
And were you going after pop hits like they were, or was that...
I was trying to, yeah, I was trying to, but anybody could have sang some of the stuff that they gave me to sing there, and it was rubbish.
Right. And having done the Eric Delaney band, you were doing like shows at the Hammersmiths on the same bill as the Beatles. Is that?
Yes, I did. I did the Beatles Christmas show. I may be wrong about this. It might be 64. Mm-hmm. I think it might be 64. I think. Yeah, I think it would be 64.
And geeky question number one.
Yeah.
Who was your favourite Beatle?
I suppose John Lennon, really. But
right.
Didn't really get to know them, you know. They were very cocooned in their dressing room, you know, and I was up in the gods in mine, and there was always people going in and out. They were right at the height of their career, you know.
And what kind of songs were you singing on that bill?
What did I do? The Mike Cotton Sound, I know, were the backing band, and I think I did a ballad. I remember doing a ballad, a Christmas ballad, Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. I think it was one of those things. I'm sure I did. And screaming Beatles fans all the way through, you know. I'm pretty sure.
And you did a Stone show as well, didn't you, around that time?
Yeah, they were always doing these summer concerts. I was always guesting on those things as well. I didn't really I had blinkers on then, you know. It all sort of like seems to be a bit hazy, you know. I wasn't really enjoying myself very much. Hadn't really any direction. Mm-hmm. Never really found any musical direction until I was in a band called Dada. I met Pete Gage, and we formed this band Dada that later became Vinegar Joe. Then I sort of found some sort of musical direction.
Mm-hmm. And that was around 67, 68 when the blues boom, got the Fleetwood Mac, Chicken Shack, John Mayall Can't Play Blues thing was happening in England. And you'd been sung a lot of blues. Did you not want to join that sort of Chicken Shack kind of 12-bar scene?
Well,
Jimmy Reed?
Dada was such a fusion of so many things. It was outrageous band. I found that a bit more exciting at the time, you know.
And how did the idea come for it? 12-piece.
I suppose it had to be Pete's baby, really. It was his idea.
Right.
He's a very clever bloke.
And they were all ace musicians and...
Oh, yeah, and me. There were two other singers. There were in the original band. There was Jimmy Chambers, a lovely singer, and Paul Corder. He left, and then Jimmy left in the end, and there was just Robert. No, there was just Robert and Jimmy and myself. And then it just ended up with Robert and myself, and then we formed Vinegar Joe.
Now, when did you first meet Robert Palmer? What was your first impression of the guy?
Oh, I thought he was wonderful. I thought he was so good looking. We went to see him. He was working with the Alan Bound set at a club in Hanley, and Pete and I were looking for another singer because Paul had left, and we were looking for another front man. And we'd heard about this guy, Robert Palmer. We heard that he was good looking and that he was a great singer, everything, very musicianly. Went to see him and he was fabulous. He was just so good. He really was. He just had that thing, you know.
And I read somewhere that at the beginning in Vinegar Joe, you kind of sensed that perhaps they wanted him to be the total focus, and you were sort of not going to be there all that long. Is that right?
I don't think Chris Blackwell really wanted me in the band. When they formed Vinegar Joe out of Dada, the ashes of Dada, I don't think Chris Blackwell wanted me in the band, but it was Robert who said, "No, she's great. She sings really good."
And Vinegar Joe was one of those bands that it got tons of street cred, Reading festivals, Old Grey Whistle Test, all of that. It had great reputation, but didn't enjoy a lot of commercial success, did it really? Yeah,
you ask yourself why, don't you? You do ask yourself why. I think we were a rehearsal band, really, for Robert Palmer's career. I think that's how Chris Blackwell saw it. I wasn't really supposed to get all the publicity, which I did. And I think he was a bit cheesed about that.
Now, your image there, I'd read somewhere, was described as wall-to-wall rauncherama.
Oh, yeah.
Now, then, did your image come from you, or was it a band decision that it was going to be a very upfront, raunchy blues singer, or was it your idea?
I think it was really my idea, which had been built out of frustration, really, from all the years of being in that 60s thing where, you know, girls had to be all sweet and pretty and all nice little frocks and that. And I went, hey, you know, here I am, watch this, you know. And I think how that was born.
And did you enjoy Vinegar Joe?
I loved every minute of it. I was very, very sad that Robert decided to go and pursue a solo career. But Pete and I and Steve York, the bass player, who were the main rhythm section in Vinegar Joe, decided that, well, without Robert, there was no Vinegar Joe. So that was that, really. But I was very, very sad because we were getting such a lot of recognition in America. You know, that was the place for us, and it was, to me, it was a shame that we didn't continue.
But as you say, Robert Palmer definitely had a master plan, and
afraid so,
he had his sights set on.
Yes, yeah, but he did well, didn't he? I mean, the lad did well. I mean, good luck to him, you know. Yeah. I mean, he was a great writer, and he did very, very well. And it was meant to be, you know. It was not meant to be with Vinegar Joe.
And then you had an episode in America.
Yes. Well, mind you, I enjoyed myself, but I was backup singer for a band called Wet Willie. I mean, it's a really odd name, isn't it, Wet Willie? I mean, it means something totally different in America than it does here. But they were called Wet Willie, and I did these backup singer for them for a couple of months. I had a great time. It was fabulous, because none of the band really drank. and they used to get all this free booze wherever they went, which of course, you know, in England when we were gigging, we never used to get anything from the promoter, no sandwiches, no beer, no nothing. And every place we went to, they'd be getting, and they'd say, oh, what do you want, Elk? I'll say, well, I'll have a bottle of brandy, you know, if you like, you know. And if they didn't have brandy, they'd have Jack Daniels. So I said, oh, yeah, you know, I'll have some of that. I had a great time. It was fabulous. Food wherever we went, you know, it was really good. Mind you, I must admit, I've never eaten any hamburgers since that tour. They did not agree with me. Those big American cheeseburger thing, I've never ever eaten meat anyway since those days.
And what led to the A&M sort of contact around that time?
Right, well, a man called Alan Seifert phoned me and asked me would I like to do a guest track on this album with, there were lots of other artists on the album. I think it was called Flash Fearless, Alice Cooper, lots of other people. I can't remember their names. I mean, it's a long time ago, but I remember his name. And I did a track on, and he was overwhelmed with my performance. And it went from there, really. Alan got me a contract with A&M Records and managed me for several years afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Did you sense around that time, we talked about Rich Man's Woman and that album, and that was a disappointment in a certain way for you, yes?
Well, it was, only that the demos were so good.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was saying earlier, my problem has always been, I know I have this, I've got a deep-seated inferiority complex. I know it, and very, very hard to overcome sometimes. And I just couldn't assert myself then to say to the people, no, 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 that's wrong, this is how I want it. So that's how the album ended up. And I think Derek Green was very disappointed because he originally signed me because he liked those demos. Yeah. He thought they were great, you know, and I think that was why, you know, he was disappointed. But of course, you know, they put the album out, didn't put the great big guns behind it, but of course they did with the next one, 2 Days Away, which was fabulous, you know.
Did you sense with that album, 2 Days Away, that the big time beckons?
I knew that Derek Green was 100% behind that album. He was 100% behind the single, Pearl's a Singer. He really, really felt that was it. And I think if you've got that, and he was the head of the company then in England, there you are, you know, if you've got the product, you just need someone to go out there and sell it for you, don't you? I mean, that's how it says to me in my little mind anyway.
And so 1977, for a couple of years then, you had a string of 4 singles.
Yes.
Was that also the happiest time of your career?
I would say I enjoyed it to an extent, but I feel that, again, because of not asserting myself enough, I have trusted people and they've tended to put me into more of a middle-of-the-road, mainstream sort of box, which is a shame, really, because, I mean, there's more to me than that, as you will hear and see on this video.
And after that, there was also a period when you were with Legend Records.
Yes, that was
but
very
before
successful.
Then, you have sold the most albums of any UK female singer. Is that right? That's a record that I think.
So they say, but it doesn't mean anything to me. I haven't got the money. I'm probably the poorest, you know.
Yeah. And the break from A&M after all that sort of success in terms of record sales came because there was a change at the top. Is that right? Yes,
Derek Green left A&M Records, and the people that took over, in fact, this is me, I can't even remember their names now. This is how superfluous they have become to me in my career. But 2 other people took over and did not share the same enthusiasm for Elkie Brooks and the likes of. So they were very, very happy to give me my contract back. And I moved on to Legend Records.
And how did you enjoy your stay there?
I did very well. I mean, the No More the Fool album did really well for me. Unfortunately, the following album, they didn't put as much enthusiasm or money behind it as they did with No More the Fool, and it wasn't as big a success.
And you're working with writers like Russ Ballard and Chris Rea, is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say that I was working with them. They had those songs, and I did the songs, No More the Fool. And Fool If You Think It's Over was from the Pearls album, which was prior to that.
Right.
So no, I've never actually collaborated, unfortunately, with those people, but there is
Right.
time.
And standard question in a certain way, the Top of the Pops experience, did you enjoy all of that side of the business?
I can remember doing Top of the Pops, and they really hated me because I was always if it wasn't right, you know, because of course their things were very, very live in those days. And if it wasn't quite right, I'd stop and start again, and the director would go up that bloody wall with me. But it has to be right. I think it was Sunshine After the Rain, and the band had started too slow or something, you know, when it came into tempo. I said, no, stop, we're going to do it again. He went crazy, you know.
And the 90s, how do you remember those? Were they a happy time for you? You moved to Devon around that time, did you?
No, we moved to Devon 81.
Oh, is that?
Yes,
Right.
yes,
And that's where you had your studio
yes,
and done a lot of albums there.
yes, with my husband, and then of course now with Jay.
Right. And so what plans for the future? What's the future hold? This next album, White Girl Lost in the Blues?
Well, I think it's looking very good. Most certainly in America. I have a friend of mine who's negotiating a contract for me at this moment in time with an American company. So I think I'm going to go over there. I'm going to strut my stuff and see what they think.
And how many gigs a year? What kind of schedule would you be happy with over the next few years? What kind of lifestyle would be ideal for you?
Well, I've certainly done a lot of gigs. I mean, when you asked me about the 90s, I mean, I was gigging like 70, 80 gigs every year, you know. This year, the shows are fairly scattered, which I'm really happy about. So it means that I can finish the album in between all the dates I'm doing, which is marvellous. But in the few years, to answer your question, well, I mean, my fitness level is fairly high. So I think I'll be gigging for a long time to come. I think I'll be doing quite a few years on the road, but I'd like to feel that they're fairly well planned, you know, because the worst thing is when you're tired and you have to go on and you have to perform when you're tired. There is nothing worse, and I've had to do that an awful lot in my life. So that is why it is so important for me to have everything very, very well planned out, you know. So I give the best every night. That's what I want to do. I don't want to give a substandard performance.
Are you still doing Aikido?
Oh yes, very, very much so. I've trained in Aikido since 88. 42 I started.
And that's helped also with performance and just the fitness side of things, yeah?
I like doing it. I think any exercise, running, swimming, I love swimming, anything is good if you do it on a regular basis, which I do, and I do my Aikido on a regular basis. I exercise every morning. I do all my Aikido exercises when I can, and when I'm at home in Devon I attend a class. We have a terrific class run by a wonderful lady called Jenny Herniman. She's a third Dan, and Morgan Mills, who is a second Dan. He is absolutely fantastic, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I go as often as I can when I'm down there.
And my last question is, what is the happiest memory of your years in the business? What springs to mind?
I mean, it sounds really corny, but I'd say when my son Jay was born, Jermaine, his real name is Jermaine after Jermaine Jackson, but when Jay was born and when Joey was born, really sort of corny things, but they have been the happiest times for me in my life, you know. I mean, that is the most important thing to me, my family, you know. Everything has to work around that.
Thank you for your time.
Ah, you're welcome.